Hello and welcome back to the NNP Symposium 2021, Day 3. As we start to round off this year's symposium, we are joined by James Glickman, speaking on collecting American Colonial Coins 101, how to get started. James, go ahead. Perfect. James has been collecting since 2003, is a member of C4, the Colonial Coin Collectors Club, and serves as the regional vice president as well as the education coordinator for C4. In any case, I'm going to pass this off to James, and James, just let me know when you'd like me to
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Matthew, and thank you to the Newman Numismatic Symposium for having me speak today. I'm speaking on collecting American colonials. We call it Colonials 101, holding history in your hands. Next slide. Thank you. So today is designed to be sort of an introduction to the field, to the little corner of our hobby called colonial coin and currency collecting. Maybe some of you already have a few colonials and you've already dabbled a little bit, or maybe you just have seen some pictures and read a little bit about it and are interested. Either way, this is meant for beginners or those interested in getting involved in the field to learn a little bit about the excitement of collecting American colonials. You see here on the left a real nice picture of some colonial currency and a variety of colonial coins that are of great interest on top. On the right is a picture, kind of a nice map to get us situated to start thinking about colonial America, to start thinking about the 13 colonies in the area where people settled in the 1700s before our current Constitution came into being, for example, and before our nation grew into what it is today. You see in the bottom Leo Shane and Jim Glickman. Leo Shane is also a C4 member. He's the C4 librarian, and I just want to give him credit. He and I developed this PowerPoint. We've given it a couple of times. So shout out to Leo. And next slide, please. So throughout the presentation today, we're going to have a little bit of what I call eye candy, just a few little examples, just to get our appetite, just to whet our appetite a little bit. This is one of Leo's favorites. And again, Leo Shane and I developed this presentation. This is a beautiful Fugio scent authorized by the Continental Congress, minted and distributed in 1787. You see in the reverse 13 links, the iconography representing the 13 colonies and their destiny interlinked. Beautiful coin, just to get our appetite whetted. Next slide. So we're going to ask a series of questions today in this introductory course. And we're going to start off with, what are American colonials, and how do you define them, and what are the boundaries? And then we're going to move on to, well, how do we collect them, and how do we grade them and care for them? And we're going to be covering a wide range of topics today. The first topic is, well, just to begin with, what are American colonials? The first question I think sometimes people ask is, well, what time period are we talking about? When we're talking about coins and currency that were made when? Some people think, all the way from the 15th century, which is the 1500s, all the way to, people think 1776, the Declaration of Independence. Some people say, well, up to 1787, when our Constitution was first written, and some people say, well, up to the very time up to when the federal government, the then new federal government, established a mint, the Mint Act of 1792, and started minting their own coins. Some people say, well, even beyond that, to the time when there was, during and after George Washington's presidency, there were coins that were minted to honor him and honor his presidency, and even honor him after his death. Next slide, please. So here are some nice illustrations of what I was just talking about, some of the different time periods that people have in mind when they think about colonial coins. So we have a beautiful Spanish pistarine, 1721. Many coins that circulated in colonial America were actually minted in Mexico, present-day Mexico and South America, where they had large Spanish mints that were created from large stores of silver that were found. You see, for later time periods, you see a piece of continental currency on the right. You see the Fugio cent we already talked about in the bottom left. Here's a Washington token to honor George Washington. So are these American colonials? Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. And people ask, well, where were they made? What constitutes a colonial? Is it something that is only minted, or if it's currency printed in America? Is that our definition? Was it, how about coins that were authorized by the mother country, Britain, for circulation, specifically for circulation in the colonies? How about just coins and paper money, but that simply circulated in the colonies, but were minted in other countries? People came over to this country either on business or to resettle here. They had coins with them, and coins that were minted in various European countries. Are those colonials? How about coins that were not minted by any government but were privately minted as speculative issues and circulated? Do those count? Now, how about counterfeits? There were counterfeits that were made here in the colonies, and counterfeits that were made back in the mother country. Do we count those? Next slide. And here's some illustrations of the questions I was just asking. Here's a beautiful North Carolina 10-shilling bill that was minted, obviously printed in North Carolina. Here's a Virginia halfpenny on the right. That was actually minted in England specifically for their colony of Virginia, which was in great need of circulated coinage. Then you see an 8 real cob minted in Bolivia, 1686. That was certainly circulated, that type of coin certainly circulated in this country. On the bottom right, Nova Constellatio, very interesting coinage. We don't know for sure. There's theories about who minted it, where it was minted, when it was minted. We really think it was minted in England, and we think we might know who was involved, who was behind this non-government sort of speculative issue that certainly circulated in this country. And then, of course, in the bottom left, all kinds of counterfeits. Counterfeits in this country at Machen Mills and other places. Counterfeits in England that were sent over here in great quantities, caused lots of problems. Are these all American colonials? Next slide. So this slide points out, first of all, more examples of really pretty on the upper right, very beautiful bill that was among the ones printed by the Continental Congress. And you might have heard the saying, not worth a continental, because they great inflation problems caused by the printing of many of these bills. We have on the left a so-called pillar doll, the pieces of eight. We have coins here from France and from Brazil. As the slide suggests, coins that circulated in the 13 colonies in what we think of as colonial America from many countries. And can't forget Vermont, which wasn't one of the original 13 colonies, but was an independent republic. So there are a great variety of materials that we have to consider. Next slide. So the answer that I think we'd like to give here as colonial coin collectors and as colonial currency collectors is all of the above. And so the previous slides were meant to give just a kind of a flavor of the great breadth of material, of numismatic material that all comes under the umbrella of American colonials, colonial coins and currency. And a colonial collection can include any one of the above. It can include coins that were minted elsewhere, either by governments or by private parties, that circulated in America. Certainly, it obviously includes coins that were minted in this country, and certain of the colonies like New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts of the 13 colonies minted coins, and certainly Vermont, as well as an independent republic at that time, didn't become a state till 1791, I believe. So a great variety of paper money and coinage. We have Spanish coinage that was minted in the New World, but circulated heavily here, counterfeits, all manner of things, because what circulated in the New World was in reality a whole mishmash of many things. And really what you collect, there are as many types of collections as there are collectors. Most collectors that I know collect in their own individual way, reflecting their own interest and personality and really their own imagination. And typically, colonial coin collectors get involved, they collect one thing, something else catches their attention, and they can collect in many different ways. And then within, we'll cover this a little later, there are many ways to collect when you decide what area, how to collect in that area. Many, many ways, again, only limited by your imagination. Next slide. So now that we've talked a little bit about what's encompassed by the field of collecting colonials, American colonials, why should we collect colonials? What's interesting about it? Why should we get excited about it and decide to kind of be in this little corner of the larger hobby? Well, I think one big reason is, in addition to the variety I've talked about, is really, as we say, as the slide says, you're really holding American history in your hands. The paper money, the coins that you'll be dealing with, they have a story to tell. They have some connection to that exciting time in American history where our country was becoming what it is today. And there are all kinds of connections, and I think most everybody who collects American colonials is very interested in history, learns that whatever the coin or bill has to say, learns the connection to either the political or the economic or the social conditions of that time. And the more you understand the connections between the American numismatic material and what was happening at that time, the background stories, and even some of the interesting characters that were involved, the more interesting it becomes. So here in this slide are a series of interesting questions. What coin was minted in Maryland? What's Paul Revere's connection to colonial currency? What coin was authorized by the American Congress but minted privately? What were the coins that were most used in day-to-day commerce in the colonies? If you were, what was in your pocket, in other words? What did merchants see? What did consumers see back in those days? Were counterfeit coins and currency a problem? Next slide, please. Well, here are the answers. And this is just meant to be just a little taste of some of the interesting connections to history that colonial currency and coins have. So it's a very interesting series. The Chalmers tokens were minted in Annapolis, and Paul Revere engraved certain plates that became the front of the so-called Massachusetts. There's a series of notes called the codfish notes, because a little codfish, which is a symbol in those days in Massachusetts, at the top of those notes, and the so-called rising sun style notes. Our Paul Revere engraved them. In fact, I just went to a Paul Revere exhibit at a museum and not too far from me, maybe within the last year, and you saw a lot of his handiwork, and it's extremely interesting. In the colonies day to day, again, as I said, a real mishmash of things. Things produced here, things produced elsewhere. Really, there was a great need for circulating coins and a shortage of coins, so a lot of things, even tokens, passed as currency. But really, British halfpence, including counterfeit British halfpence, were probably the most common thing, especially the counterfeits. They were produced in great quantities, shipped over here. A lot of times they were, in fact, almost all the time, they were lightweight, so merchants didn't like them. The probably a close second would be Spanish silver from Mexico, from Bolivia, from Peru, from a lot of places in Central and South America where the Spanish had established mints. And counterfeit coins were a great problem. They really kind of messed up the merchants. Merchants would weigh them or sometimes would refuse to take them. And whether they're accepted or not, they posed an economic kind of threat to both consumers and merchants. But they were unfortunately produced in great quantity. One little interesting fact: during the American Revolution, there was sort of economic warfare because the British produced counterfeit bills and shipped them over here to try to destroy our economy. Next slide. So now we've talked about what are colonials and why should I collect them, and I think the next question that follows logically is, well, how should I collect them? What colonials should I collect? Because there's a great variety, and a great place to start, by the way, is the Red Book. Simply go through the first section of the Red Book before you get to U.S. coinage, before you get to the half cents and large cents. Long section on colonials. Just flip through to get an idea of what's out there, and you'll see the great variety. So some people put together what's called a Red Book set. They try to get as many coins that are in the Red Book, and that's a fine way to collect, and it gives you a great introduction to the breadth of the area. Some people go for the state issues. Those are very popular. As I mentioned before, New Jersey, Connecticut, Mass, and Vermont. Well, how do you collect within those series? So some people get one of each. You can start off very simply, 4 coins, one of each of those 4 in the colonies or republic in the case of Vermont. Okay, then you might want to go a date set. You may want to go 1 New Jersey of each date it was produced. And then you might, and Connecticut would be, for example, you get an 85, 86, 87, and 88. Mass would be at 87 and 88. You may want to get a Mass cent, 87 and 88, a Mass half cent, 87 and 88. Vermont, same thing, one of each year, 85 through 88. So those are wonderful ways to collect. Sometimes you go for major types. So sometimes the bust might face right, sometimes the bust might face left, or the bust might be have mail on it, a mailing, or it might have a drapery on it. So there's some very easy to see, easy to spot visually changes, and sometimes people collect that way. If you want to get really deeper, if you're loving what you're doing, you want to get deeper, I do this. Many collectors collect by variety. So a variety would be just like with half cents and large cents, for example, or if you collect bust half dollars, or bust dimes. Variety would be, the dies change, so a new die marriage, new variety. New Jersey's have maybe 140 varieties. That's a lot, and many of those are very rare. So I think in New Jersey, in the world of New Jersey's, if you get to 80 or especially 90 varieties, you're doing very well, because after that, there's a lot of very rare varieties. And there's over 350 Connecticut varieties. So some people go even for varieties. There's maybe 39 or 40 Vermont varieties. So there's a lot of ways to collect. With Fujio set, you can do it by major type of variety, very, very satisfactory to do. Paper currency. After many years of collecting colonial coins, I started and I collect both coins and colonial currency. I'm close to completing a set of all 13 colonies. Okay, so that would be a very interesting way to collect. I also try to look for interesting people that maybe signed the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution or the Stamp Act, or maybe they were members of the Colonial Congress, Continental Congress. I try to collect by people that have, or bills rather, that have really interesting signatures of interesting people. Some people collect by the vignettes, especially with the continental currency. Extremely interesting vignettes with all kinds of iconography and symbolism to the struggle against England in the Revolution and their hopes and dreams, and just you have to a lot of these are in Latin. You have to know the Latin translation, which you will learn if you get the Newman textbook. But there's so many ways to collect. Counterfeits, a whole other world. There's lots of research going on, and people are trying to put together like so-called families of counterfeit English and Irish halfpence and evasions. People collect Washingtonia, the Spanish silver, the so-called cobs or the pillar. There's so many ways to collect. Again, as I said before, only limited by your imagination. Next slide. So here's a visual representation of just one area that I was talking about a minute ago. In this case, Vermont. So you can see there's there's a lot of difference. And so people may want to collect. Here are some major types in the Vermont series. The upper left is a so-called beloved landscape, kind of representing the beauty of the Green Mountain State. There's one variety called the baby head. We don't know why that style was chosen. Lots of theories. You have bust left, bust right. You have on the bottom right, very interesting, the so-called et lib indi reverse. That's interesting because in just about every other variety, there is it's indi et lib. For whatever reason, there's two or three, I think it's three varieties that have et lib indi instead. So people want an example of that to flush out the collection. But here's a visual representation of trying to put together a sort of a typeset in one state's coinage, in this case Vermont. Next slide. Here's some beautiful examples of some colonial bills from different states: New Jersey, Rhode Island, South Carolina. You can see the great differences in style. Many of them have interesting border designs, probably meant as enter-counterfeiting devices. Very interesting Latin or English mottos. Just almost an unending areas to explore and to learn about. Next slide. So, how rare are colonials? Well, good question, because you're sometimes dealing with areas that run from some common varieties to some very, very quickly get to the very, very rare varieties. So here's the kind of the system we used for labeling varieties. So if you look, for example, at a catalog that had a section on colonial coins, you always want to see, is it an R2, is it an R5, an R6? The higher the number, the more rare it is, up to R9, unique. And I think that through R4, R1 through R4 are pretty much available to most collectors, even collecting on a budget. Once you get to R5, maybe not, it depends. Maybe it's something that's available. R6 and above is going to be tougher to collect, but still sometimes available and still extremely interesting. And even if you don't own one, still extremely interesting to learn about. But it's interesting, as you see in the bottom, compared to the so-called rare 1909 SVDB, with almost half a million mintage. Here you're talking about maybe in the hundreds rather than the hundreds of thousands. And yet, with some diligence, you can find, up through R4 coins with some patience. So there's not as many, but they're available, and just the fact that you're holding something in your hand that there's just not that many of, it just, I think, to me, adds to their intrinsic interest. Next slide. Are colonials expensive? Well, that's a question that I'm sure I and everybody else who when they're new to this area wonders, and the answer is, well, it depends. Yes and no. There are plenty of very rare high-grade material that would be extremely expensive and outside my and many people's budgets. As it says in the slide, rarity and condition are key, like in any other area of numismatics. So if there are only 20 known, and you have a very high-grade example that's among the finest known, that's going to be very expensive. But you can get a 1787 Connecticut copper, for $100 or $200, $250, you can get a very interesting coin with a story to tell, with a lot behind it, and find it. I mean, this is something that was held by who knows who, back when life was very different, when the country was just getting started in colonial America. So, if you can see the design that was imprinted on it and see the motto, that to me is very, very interesting. The same with, you can get a kind of a not rare a relatively not rare colonial bill for a few hundred, 150, and come away with something very interesting. Sometimes you're going to spend more, obviously, and it just depends. But you'll get a sense of the prices when you look at auctions, look at dealers' price lists, look at websites that dealers have, and you just get to know what's out there and walk around at shows, at coin shows. Remember those when those are held again. The best way is kind of look at as much as you can to get a sense of the prices and what things cost. Next slide. Some more eye candy. This is just a little interlude here. One of my favorite coins or a series, the so-called Nova Borax. Only 4 varieties, minted in New York. No one's sure. We think we know who is involved in minting it, a man named John Bailey. We don't know exactly where. We don't know a lot of the details. Very interesting. Next slide. What books are available on Colonials? Well, there are kind of, I would think of 2 types of books. There are kind of generalist books, like you'll see in the pictures below. In Yankee Doodle's Pocket by Will Nipper, who's the editor of the C4 newsletter, actually. That's a great introductory book. There's also a book by a man named Phil Mossman. There are also specialty books. You see on the bottom right, New Jersey State Coppers. On the bottom left is a book about Hibernias. Wonderful book. And so you'll probably want to get some basic books that cover different areas. And once you get involved in a specific area and you decide, I want to really learn more and specialize in that area, you're going to want to get the book or books that have been written about that area. There's a book coming out sometime, I think later this year, on Connecticut coppers. That's going to be a wonderful book. It's a book that's been long in the making. It's going to be a wonderful addition to what's out there. I think there's not a handout because we're not here in person. I've given this presentation a few times before. I think what you could do is, you don't have to be a member, but you can still go onto the C4 website, which is www.colonialcoins.org. That's www.colonialcoins.org. And simply go to press the button called Articles, go to the article called Beginner's Guide to Collecting Colonial Coins, which has some of the same materials I'm giving you today in this talk, but it also contains kind of a short list of some basic books that you're going to want to have in categories, sort of books that are generally kind of generalist books for the colonial area, and then under headings for Connecticut, New Jersey, Fugios, what books are available for specialists. That's an area I'd go to get a sense of what books there are. You may want to also get in contact with book dealers, numismatic book dealers that sell colonial books, like Charlie Davis or David Fanning. You can find their Colby and Fanning or Charlie Davis. You can find their websites. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Earlier slide is one thing I forgot to say. Back to the slide. If you join C4, which I would recommend if you really decide this is for you, C4 has a lot of advantages, including a great newsletter and a convention every year. We'll have it again in person once that's safe to do so. It's held every year in Baltimore in connection with the Whitman show. But we have a lending library. Leo Shane's the librarian, and you don't have to make an investment in a book if you're not sure it's for you. You can join C4, borrow the book, see if it's for you, and then return the book, and if it's for you, buy it. Next slide. How do you grade colonials? It's not an easy task because no 2 look exactly the same. Well, that's a little bit of an overstatement, but there's such great variety. I mean, the minting techniques were crude compared to later in time, and there's so many differences in the quality of the planchets, the striking ability, the wear of the dies cracked. There's all kinds of problems and all kinds of post-strike damage maybe or issues, or maybe they get lost in the ground, and there's some porosity. There's so many issues. It really takes a lot of practice, and really what I'd recommend is look at a lot of coins, either online or once we can go back to having shows. Go to a show, local shows, regional shows. national shows. Look at them, and you'll get a sense of how they are. Look at catalogs and see how the cataloger graded the coin. That's really key. See what the professionals, the catalogers, thought about something. There may be something that you may not understand why that grade is that way, and it may be that for that variety, specialists know that maybe it didn't strike up well in a certain area. So if an area of the coin, let's say a peripheral area where there's a legend, the legend is weak, it may not be from the coin, it may be striking issues that are endemic to that variety. And then once you get involved in an area, let's say Vermont, and you get to know the varieties, you may say to yourself, oh yeah, the rider 2026. Oh yeah, that comes a certain way, or the rider 30. Oh yeah, that's a very very rare coin. But you get to know kind of almost the fabric and the look of the coin and kind of how it comes. And so that'll tell you, well, am I looking at a coin that's really good for that variety or not so good? And you get a sense of, is it wear, or is it something about the way the coin was struck? But that takes some getting to know, getting some specialty information, getting the books, looking at a lot of coins, looking at a lot of catalogs, and that's part of the fun of it. The learning curve is really, it's not something you have to do to have fun. It's really part of the fun, and I've really learned that and had a tremendous amount of fun as my knowledge increases over the years. So learn the series and the variety. I would also recommend a little show and tell here. This grading guide for early American copper coins. It's mostly for early U.S. copper, half cents and large cents, but chapter 4 talks about grading colonials, at least the major kind of the state coiners, the major series. And I would definitely recommend you are getting that book. You may already have it if you collect large cents and half cents, but looking at chapter 4, and that's really going to help you with grading with colonials. Next slide. And here's some pictures of some of the things I talked about. Sometimes you see a plancher cutter marks. The plancher cutter missed, and they had a mistake, and you see the plancher cutter mark. I have a coin or two like that. Maybe bottom left, week date. Maybe that date almost always comes weak. The middle, the verdigris. Well, that could be that wasn't typically not a planchet issue. Typically, that's something that happened over time. Although sometimes very poor planchet quality. Maybe they couldn't get good quality planchets, and so some of the issues you see were in the planchet before the coin was struck. Some of these coins, I think it's interesting. The clips, they were trying to use every bit of copper as they could, and they mistakenly cut into a little bit of a planchet as they were trying to cut other planchets from a strip of copper that had been rolled out. Next slide. Tips for buying colonials. So as you know, if you collect coins already, you kind of already have a sense of this. But when you buy colonials, I think there's a little bit of, as I mentioned, a learning curve. So I think the cardinal rule is you really want to become knowledgeable about what you're collecting before you make any substantial purchase. I mean, you can buy something for fun, just to kind of get you excited, and that's fine. But before you make any substantial purchase, you really want to know, what is it that I'm buying, and how does this compare to other coins that are available? This might be among the best that are available for this price range, or maybe as you learn more, you decide, I can do better. I think all of us who collect colonials have had the experience of buying coins and then, maybe years later looking back and say, I wouldn't buy that coin today. And that's fine. Everybody says that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And again, as I say, that learning is part of the fun. So I think it's best to get knowledgeable first. See what's out there. Maybe talk to some people. Find fellow collectors or dealers. Ask questions. People are happy to share. Shop around, compare price, and see kind of, again, what quality, what price can yield what quality if you shop around. Also, what turns you on and what turns you off. Some people don't mind an edge bump or a very slight hairline scratch. Some people they do. What bothers one person doesn't bother another. So look at a coin and say, is this something that I'm going to pull out a year or a couple of years or 5 years from now and still be happy with? Get to know the dealers. Different dealers do things differently. So first of all, I think it's best as a beginner deal with well-known and respected colonial dealers. Deal with the people that are there that have established reputations. And I think they'll stand you in good stead. Learn a little bit about how the dealer operates. Some will be willing to negotiate. Others give you a price, and that's their firm price, and either you pay the price or say no, thank you. That's fine. Just kind of learn how they do it. Wait for the right coin to come to you, and it will. You think, oh, maybe I won't see that again. Unless it's very rare, extremely rare, you will see it again, and you want to be patient and get the coin that's right for you. You'll be happier in the long run. I also would recommend don't get hung up on grade. I think grade is a little bit. We'll talk about grading. One thing I wanted to say about grading, if I didn't say it, and excuse me, is that I think compared to like maybe EAC grades where they have a sharpness grade and then they have a net grade, it may be a VF20 coin, but because there's maybe a scratch or an edge bump or maybe some slight porosity, maybe it's net F12. Well, Colonials typically a little bit different. Typically, they just give a sharpness grade and they describe the coin and what the issues are. So you might have a VF coin choice, or you might have a VF coin, VF coin that has some surface issues. Don't get hung up on the grade for that reason. Different people can have different opinions of it. If you have a coin, and some colonial dealers don't even put grades on it. If you have a coin that's really right for you, and it says to you, this is a coin I want to have in my collection, and the price seems right, and you can agree on price, then buy the coin. And if the dealer thinks of it as an F15 and you think of it as a VF20, fine. But you have the coin that makes you happy for a price that you think is acceptable. Buy the coin. Don't get hung up on grade. That's just a little bit of advice. Next slide. Where can you find colonials? Well, they're not as easy to find, certainly as seated Liberty coinage or even bust coinage, but you can find them in many places. You want to try to find, if you join Scene 4, which I recommend, the C4 newsletter has ads by dealers. If you're at the C4 holds an annual convention at the Baltimore show in November of course not during COVID, but when it's safe, it'll resume. And there's actually a C4 area, and talk to people. There's a C4 table in that C4 area. There are dealers that deal in Connecticut and colonials. There are people manning the C4 table that will tell you what dealers would have colonial material. Get to know those dealers. Try to talk to people at the C4 table and learn a little bit. Try to look at auction catalogs. Go to Stack's, for example, website or Heritage website or Goldberg, and try to there are others. Those are some examples. Try to see, use search terms and try to see what they have and what they went for, what prices they went for, and get a sense. Read the lot descriptions. You can learn so much from coin catalogs, from the lot descriptions, about what the cataloger thought about the coin and what was important and what the grade was. And you'll see many pictures of different varieties, and that'll really help you. I would say certainly coin shops are less of them than there used to be. Go to your local show, go to regional shows, and look around and try to ask dealers, do you have any colonials? If they say no, well, do you know who does at this show? And they'll point you in the right direction. Websites of some dealers have websites. Get to know your way around those websites and look around. I would say eBay, but caveat emptor, because unless you really know what you're doing, eBay, you just never know because you don't know who's putting it up. You can certainly buy coins on eBay and get good deals and get fine coins. Oftentimes it's fine. Just be very careful. I think you're better off as a beginner, dealing mostly with recognized dealers, as I said. Next slide. So I know in many areas of the hobby, people like slab coins, and then often the question comes up, well, should I collect coins in slabs or unslabbed coins, otherwise called raw? And certainly in the colonial field, there's, I wouldn't say a debate, because it's more of a situation where there's no right or wrong answer. There isn't a right answer. It isn't a wrong answer. I would say that most colonial collectors that I know, especially the ones that have been doing it for a long time, like to have their coins raw. They like to pick up the coin. They like to be able to weigh it. They like to be able to measure it, sometimes called the metrology of the coin. They like to be able to find the diameter and the weight, and they like to look at it up close and look at the edge. And there's a lot of different reasons why you want to hold the coin in your hand. First of all, it's just so cool. You don't want to have any plastic come between you and the coin. That's how many collectors feel. That's how I feel. Most of my coins are raw. I will break a coin out of a slab, except that I also have a number of colonial coins that I keep in the slab. Why? Maybe they came from the Newman sale, the Partridge sale. They came from a very important named sale, and I want to keep that in there. So I have a combination. There are certainly pros and cons to each. Some people really like them in slabs, and that's fine. Again, no right or wrong answer. One caveat: never rely on what's stated on the slab as to grade. The goal is to become a knowledgeable collector and to grade your coin, the coin yourself. You may completely disagree with what the slab says about the grade. And by the way, if you like the coin, if it's right for you, and if the price is one you're willing to pay, you feel free to buy that slabbed coin, even though the grade on it is one with which you disagree. That's fine. Doesn't mean you shouldn't buy the coin, but don't rely on the grade in the coin. Don't even rely on the attribution. There's been instances where the attribution on a slab was wrong, okay? Sometimes the attribution points, the difference between one variety and another can be very subtle. So you want to, and as far as the coin itself, is it a coin that appeals to you? Is it a coin that speaks to you? Don't go about simply what's on the slab. Really look at the coin itself and decide, is that coin for me? What do I think about that coin? And by the way, if you buy the coin, you don't have to keep it in the slab. You can always crack it out. Be careful doing so, and there's ways to do it. But I certainly think with currency, you want to keep it, if not if it comes in a holder like the PCGS holder illustrated, you want to keep it in there for protection, or some other plastic holder. You don't want to have it out where it could be affected or damaged. Next slide. How do I care? Well, if it's in a slab, it's in a slab. But if it's not in a slab, how do you care for those coins? Well, I think that you want to, and I'm going to do a little show and tell here, I think you want to keep it in some sort of either jeweler's tissue, or I'm showing you a simple cotton liner that I purchased in bulk. You simply put the coin in it, and then you put it in a 2x2 envelope. And then you write on the envelope what you think is important about the coin, the date, the variety, what it is, maybe the grade, or other attributes. Maybe if it has some important provenance, this could be ex Newman or something like that. So that's how colonial collectors often keep their coins that aren't in slabs. This and/or jeweler's paper. Really, if you buy a coin, it's in a plastic flip, the kind that are especially that are easily moved and that are soft. Those have PVC. The ones that are rigid don't have PVC, but the ones that are soft, they have PVC. Get that coin as soon as you can out of that. In fact, just to be safe, take it out of any plastic flip and have it like this in a cotton liner, because the cotton liner prevents it from, copper is a very reactive metal. Same with silver, but most colonial coins are copper. It keeps it from further reacting or reacting with other substances. So you want to get it out of the PVC flip and have it be safe in here, and put this in an envelope. Some collectors use substances like blue ribbon or acetone when they brush the coin. If you're going to do that, it's explained in chapter 1 of that same book that I mentioned before, the grading guide. Chapter 1 talks about caring for coins. But I would say if you're going to do that, be extremely careful. Practice on a coin that you don't care about, just to experiment. So if the coin gets ruined or gets too harshly cleaned or something, you make a mistake. You're just learning. Do it on something that you don't care at all about. Do not do it on a colonial that you care about. Do it on some non-colonial coin. and coin of no value really. You want to keep currency in a safe. Oh, I know. You want to brush the coin. If coins are not in slabs, then you usually brush them every year, couple of years, very, very gently. And again, it's how to do it is described in that chapter 1 of that book I showed you. For currency, keep it in something plastic. Keep it, and don't keep it for extended time, periods of time in bright light. You don't want it to fade at all. Next slide. What supplies should you have? I've alluded to some of it. I've alluded to the cotton, for non-slab coins, the cotton liners. You want to have this is I think a 5x, or a 10x, or some people get 3x. You want to get, this is inexpensive. This is a Bausch & Lomb magnifier. You definitely want to have these. You want to carry it with you if you go to a show or a coin shop or anything. You want to get some sort of tray. There are many types. It could be a simple felt pad. This is a little bit fancier. It has edges, nicely pointed. Doesn't matter. Whenever you take out a coin, no matter what, the funniest things will happen. You always want to have it over something soft. Doesn't matter. It could be anything. Just have that coin over something soft every minute that you have it out of the envelope. Now, if it's in a slab, that's different. But if it's non-slab, you want to have, when it's out of the envelope, every minute you want to have it over something soft. So if it drops, lands on something soft, not hurt, no dings. You don't want to learn that lesson the hard way. I've already talked about the brush you want to have, and these are all things that you can acquire. You see in the bottom left of the picture here, of the slide here, a digital scale. I think that's very important. When you get into colonials a little more, you want to see, for example, is it a counterfeits or very light? Different varieties come with different weight ranges. I think you really want to, at some point, get a small digital scale. They aren't that expensive. Next slide. One thing I mentioned is you also want to get some, if you don't have it slabbed, a series of envelopes that come in white and other colors. You want to have these cotton liners and white envelopes, plenty of them. Okay, a word about security. This goes for not only colonial coins, but really any type of coins. You really want to be very careful if you're carrying coins with you to and from a coin show, whether you're driving, whether you're going by plane or by train. You have to think about every moment. So you have to think about hotel security, motel security. You have to think about in the car, never, ever, ever leave valuable numismatic or other material in a car. Even for 10 minutes. Oh, I'm just going to run in to make a pit stop to go to the bathroom. Oh, I'm just going to run in and get a Coke. You really don't want to leave anything in your car unattended for even a moment. And there's stories about people who've had problems there. You don't want to you want to have everything on your person at a coin show. You want to in your house, you want to think, well, what things of value do I have in my house? And at some point, you have to think, well, is it time to get a safety deposit box? So these are all things that you should ask advanced collectors, ask dealers. But if you're just starting out, you always want to think about security. At a coin show, you always want to know where your items of value are. You want to keep it on your person, and just be aware of your surroundings at all time. Next slide. Here's one last bit of eye candy, a beautiful Vermont landscape. To me, I can look at this and just be completely affected by the charm of the coin. I'll just very quickly, just as an example of how interesting these coins are, it says the motto or the legend on the obverse, Vermontensium Res Publica, the Republic of Vermont. It wasn't a state yet. It was an independent republic. On the back, it's hard to see, but it says Quarta Stella Decima, which is Latin for the 14th star. And it's really a political motto. They're announcing their intention. They want to become the 14th state. There's 13. They want to become the 14th. Obviously, the beautiful mountains, the Green Mountain State, the plow at the bottom of the obverse showing the agricultural nature of the state. it's a beautiful coin, and people when they get into Vermont love the landscape. So just another example of one of our favorites to show you. Next slide. And just final slide, just here are some interesting websites. www.colonialcoins.org, that's C4, that's the coin club that I mentioned, Colonial Coin Collectors Club. Highly recommend it if you really get into colonials. That's going to just be so valuable to you. There's EAC's website, American Numismatic Association. They also have a lending library. American Numismatic Society. Check out these websites because they have information about coins and numismatic literature. And here's the Baltimore Coin Expo, their website, where C4, when safe, when COVID's over, has their annual convention which includes educational programs and just a lot going on there. So I'll stop there. Maybe about 10 minutes to go, and I just will open it up for any questions. And I've enjoyed having you as an audience, and I hope you found this talk helpful. Happy to answer questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, James, for the fantastic presentation. Reminder to the audience that you can use the Q&A feature on your devices to start submitting any questions. We'll sort of answer as many as we can within this last 10 minutes. I already see that we have some coming in. All right. I believe this one was mentioned in the presentation, but just in case someone missed it, what group of coins were the most commonly passed during the colonial times?
So probably the most common were English halfpence and farthings, but mostly halfpence. And many of those were counterfeit. Probably the second most were, or maybe tied for first or a close second would be, there were lots of colonial silver, Spanish silver, 8 reals, 4 reals, 2 reals that were minted in Central and South America.
Oh, very interesting. Another audience member says, love your enthusiasm. Hope it rubs off on the listeners. A quick story for you. Within the last 2 years, I obtained a 1746 Delaware bill of credit printed by Benjamin Franklin for less than $300. How cool is that?
The answer, extremely cool.
And I can't agree more. Oh,
and thank you for your comment.
Yes. Let's see. Has anyone ever completed a complete set of Connecticut coppers by variety?
I don't know the answer to that. I suspect that some people have gotten very close, but the answer is no. And there's like 354 varieties, and plus some mules. A mule is well, that's another story, but it's an unauthorized kind of mixing of dyes that weren't meant to be together. But I think because some of the varieties are unique, and they may be in institutions like the Connecticut Historical Society or different museums, the A&A Museum, because they're not available to collectors and there may only be 1 or 2 available. I think that I don't know that anybody's been able to collect in one private collection all of them.
Gotcha. I believe this was mentioned as well. Did Paul Revere design or print any Continental Congress currency?
Great question. I don't know of any Continental Congress currency that he printed. He did, as I said in my talk, he's confirmed to be the one who designed the plates for 2 areas of the Massachusetts currency from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I don't know that he I'm unaware of any continental currency that he designed.
Gotcha. Earlier in the presentation, you mentioned that the Fugios were authorized by the American Congress but minted privately. What was the reasoning for this?
I think that at that point they weren't set up to run a mint themselves. There's really 2 ways that it was done, kind of 2 business propositions. Like the Commonwealth of Massachusetts set up their own mint. Other states, like New Jersey, sort of farmed it out. I guess today we'd call it, well, they kind of just contracted it out. And I don't think that the Continental Congress really had the means then to set up their own mint. So they took bids and they contracted it out, and James Jarvis won the bid.
See, we got another comment coming in. Great general use presentation between you and Ray Williams, who presented on Friday. I will be joining C4.
Oh, that's tremendous.
Um, Jim, you are infectious. Wonderful presentation. Who is doing an update on the Vermont series, and when is the expected release date, if so?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Well, the main um, reference work for the Vermont series, as you may know, was written by a man named Tony Carlotto. And I'm unaware of another version of that book or another book that's coming out. There's work done from time to time on updating rarities and updating condition census. I'm unaware of a new book on the series.
Let's see. Has recent research proved that the in quotation continental dollar coin is a metal, not a coin? And I guess for someone like me who's new to this sort of, what are the defining features that um, differentiate a metal and a coin?
So I don't collect metals, and so I'm probably not going to be able to give you the best answer. A coin. So this is probably an uninformed stab at it. I would think that a coin is minted by a governmental entity, or as I said, could be contracted out, but they mint themselves. They cause to be minted something that's meant for commerce. That's meant to be passed in commerce. A metal oftentimes is meant to commemorate something important, like a battle or something. That may not be, there may be exceptions to that, but that's how I think of it. As far as the continental dollar, there's a raging controversy with lots of wonderful articles that have been written. So I didn't mention it, but there's something called GENE, the Journal of Early Numismatics, that I subscribe to and you may want to subscribe to. And there's been articles there and elsewhere on both sides. And there's been some recent thoughts on that where now they think maybe it was a token or something issued in England rather than something issued here. And the debate rages on.
Let's see. Nice. Next question asker would like to know, is there a database of examples of the actual signatures of the signers of continental currency? So a collection of signatures.
I don't know of one. The main reference book for both continental and colonial currency, meaning continental meaning the Continental Congress issued many emissions of bills, and those are hotly collected. And then, of course, the 13 colonies each issue their own currency. So the main reference work that covers both that was written by Eric Newman. The latest edition, the fifth edition, in fact, all editions, has a section on the signers and which signers signed the Constitution and what bills they signed and what people signed the Declaration of Independence or the Stamp Act or the Articles of Confederation and what bills they signed. So that's the only place I know of. There may be other databases that I don't know. So
why do you think there has been such a huge increase in interest in British evasions over the past 20 years in both Britain and North America, particularly given that these pieces are not genuine authorized coins, nor are they counterfeits or officially sanctioned coins?
That's a great question. So there's been a lot of research done in the last 20 years, and especially in the last 5 or 10 years. And by the way, a book came out, Roger Moore et al. There's like 8 authors, and came out with a book on counterfeits and evasions in that area. It's actually the first of what's going to be a series of books, I believe. Came out last year or the year before, maybe 2019 it came out. If you're interested in that area, I would say if you haven't already, get that book. There's also a Machen's Mills book. Machen's Mills were a counterfeit halfpennies, halfpence minted right here in the colonies, right here in New York. That book just came out. So I think what's happened is there's been a realization that those areas were understudied and underappreciated, especially because they were so prevalent in what circulated in that time in North America. And so I think that once people started studying them and trying to categorize them into families, I think the interest just rose and rose, and and a lot more collectors were born that said, you know, I want to really get into this area and collect, and it became, you know, among them, it became infectious.
Something, one quick comment before we have some parting words. Let Jim know he got another member joining this week as well. Was here last for his same talk, and again this year. I've already purchased a lot of books for my numismatic library on Colonial already. Yesterday, the Frederick Taylor auction catalog arrived. The Sid Martin book set is also on the way here. So really
Oh, it's wonderful.
inspiring.
By the way, the Taylor catalog, one of the first ones I got when I was, because people told me to get that one. Wonderful catalog, great books to get, and thank you for the comments.
Absolutely. All right, now it looks like we're going to have to wrap it up as we move on to our final presentation. Uh, James, do you have any other parting words you'd like to say to the audience?
I would just say, make sure you're having fun. If it's something that you're not really enjoying, move to another area and just talk to people and try to get to know other people in the hobby, and just have a good time with it. Enjoy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you once again, James, for the amazing presentation, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you so much.